First debuting in 1938, Superman, the first true comic book superhero, was an instant sensation, immediately spawning a whole new world of popular culture that continues to strive in popularity today. In this video, we'll trace the inception and creation of the Man of Steel and spotlight his impact on world culture and entertainment, tracing his evolution through comics, movies, series, and other extended media over the course of more than 80 years. Prepare for liftoff in this edition of Pop Culture Evolution. In the late 1920s, after a roaring decade of exuberance and extravagance, the world fell into history's greatest economic depression, which left 15 million Americans, more than 20% of the country's population, destitute and unemployed. To those left with empty pockets, pulp magazines became a popular form of entertainment throughout the 1930s due to their affordable and widely published nature. Providing much-needed escapism, pulps took readers on action-filled adventures into exotic environments and exciting sci-fi journeys to otherworldly locales, introducing into the cultural lexicon superhuman heroes and explorers such as Tarzan, John Carter of Mars, Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, and Doc Savage. However, with crime at an all-time high, pulps also spotlit real-life issues in hard-boiled thrillers, seeing detectives and dual-personality costume crime fighters like the Shadow, the Spider, and Zorro going up against criminal gangs, mob syndicates, small-time thieves, and murderers. By the latter half of the decade, the popularity of these stories led to the emergence of action-adventure and crime comic strips, with many pulp figures crossing into pictorial quests, and others such as The Phantom, Dick Tracy, and the comedic Popeye debuting through the medium. The serialized nature of these stories also led to episodic film serials and cartoon series, transporting now legendary heroes onto the silver screen. It was the dawn of popular culture. Pulp fiction and comic writers were rich, famous, and well-respected, and many children who grew up with their stories aspired to be like them. Such was the case with Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, two 16-year-olds from Cleveland, Ohio, who met in 1932 while working for their school newsletter, Siegel as a writer and Shuster as an illustrator. The two bonded over their mutual love of pulps and the films inspired by them, soon forming a creative partnership which, in Siegel's words, was like the right chemicals coming together. Their first collaborative effort outside the newsletter was producing numerous comic strips that, in hopes of hitting it big as comic strip guys, they sent to major syndicates, agencies who sold publication rights to newspapers. After dozens of knockbacks, they turned to self-publication, creating a mail-order science fiction fanzine, one of the first of its kind, which they printed on the school's mimeograph machine. Running for only 5 issues, Science Fiction, the advance guard of future civilization, was a quaint magazine, but would soon go down in history as the publication from which Superman was born. Well, sort of. For Science Fiction's 3rd issue, published January 1933, the pair presented short story The Reign of the Superman, borrowing a word that was used regularly in literature of the era, spawning from Friedrich Nietzsche's late 1800s philosophy of the Übermensch, an ideal superior man with great power. Depicted here as a bald-headed, menacing villain whose looks have been often compared to the later Lex Luthor, this Superman was a homeless drifter who takes part in a mad scientist's experiment which leaves him with superhuman intelligence and telepathic abilities, which he chooses to use for evil. Beginning with small crimes, the Superman ultimately conspires to take over the world as he grows mad with power. In the months following the story's publication, it occurred to Siegel that Superman as a hero rather than a villain might make a great comic strip character, one which would be infinitely more commercial and have more chance at longevity. Looking to Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan for inspiration, he began writing the story of the Superman, a powerful being with superhuman strength and bulletproof skin, who uses his abilities for good in fighting local crimes. Shuster called this iteration a crude version, simply wearing a t-shirt and pants, saying he wasn't really Superman, but just a man of action. In a fairly visionary move, the duo told their story not as strips, but as a book-sized adventure, something that had only ever been done in the recently published Detective Dan, commonly considered the first comic book. Siegel, however, believed the Superman would be more interesting, and even touted him as the most astounding fiction character of all time. Again, the pair shopped their book around, but were once more shut down at every step, with many considering it too juvenile. Though consolidated book publishing behind Detective Dan showed interest, the underwhelming sales of the title led to their cancellation of further comic books. Believing that most publishers were unreceptive due to the pair's inexperienced nature, Siegel began seeking out veteran artists to collaborate with. Shuster was naturally very upset with this and destroyed the book. Siegel managed to save the cover, which is all that remains today. Siegel began re-envisioning Superman as a comic strip. One treatment saw the character as a futuristic, superpowered scientist adventurer who travels back to the 1930s in a time machine to escape an apocalyptic event. Another saw the Earth's last surviving man sending his superpowered infant son to the 1930s, where he's found on the side of a road by a couple who adopt him. While many syndicates showed interest, ultimately none committed. Despite these failures, Siegel noted a stubborn streak in him refused to abandon it, and again started from scratch, spending an entire evening in 1934 writing a new treatment. Siegel once again drew from pulp heroes like Tarzan, the greatest hero of the time, and John Carter of Mars, a human transported to the Red Planet where he finds himself with super abilities, while purposely flipping the formulaic interstellar adventures of Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers by leaving Superman on planet Earth to fight issues readers could identify with. Siegel also took heavy inspiration from mythological and biblical figures, making Superman a modern demigod in the mold of legendary ultra-strong paragons like Hercules and Samson. Many have compared Superman's journey from Krypton to Earth to escape a certain death to the infant Moses' trip down the Nile, and even drawn parallels with Christ the Saviour. Siegel additionally drew from wider pop culture, noting the animated adventures of Popeye to be one of the strongest influences, devising to take their sensational super strength and action and play them for straight adventure instead of comedy, believing they'd make a dynamic adventure strip. For this reason, Popeye is often considered the precursor to the modern superhero, if not the first. The films of swashbuckling silent-era legend Douglas Fairbanks Sr., such as The Mark of Zorro and Robin Hood, however, would provide the greatest influence on Siegel and Shuster's imagination. The character of Zorro and his alter ego Don Diego de la Vega widely influenced the decision to give Superman the dual identity of Clark Kent. The difference here was Superman would be the identity and Clark Kent the alter ego. The name was an amalgamation of screen actors Clark Gable and Kent Taylor, though Siegel based the character on himself, an ambitious reporter, which he'd always desired to be, who was mild, meek, and awkward with girls. He also introduced female love interest Lois Lane, based on 1930s film heroine Torchy Blane, portrayed by Lola Lane. Enraptured with what he'd written, Siegel eagerly showed Shuster the next morning, who joyfully agreed to collaborate again, immediately getting to work on the designs. Shuster noted, "Our concept would be to combine the best traits of all the heroes of history, so they blended the dynamic stance of Fairbanks' Zorro, the chiseled facial features of Johnny Weissmuller's Tarzan, and the muscle-bound physique of the mythological paragons." Shuster, a fan of strongmen, also looked to his idols in the field for visual reference. The Superman outfit took much from the tight-fitting athletic gear of the era, even emblazoning an emblem in the middle of his chest to make him distinctly recognizable. Superman's cape, which was added for colourful hyperdrama, took influence from those of pulp and adventure film heroes. Clark Kent, on the other hand, the bumbling comedic alter ego, took his looks from silent film comedian Harold Lloyd. Siegel and Shuster rapidly developed 4 weeks worth of strips, which they immediately shopped around to publishers. But once again, there was little interest. By 1935, however, the pair had been recognised by Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, the founder of National Allied Publications, who would later be renamed DC Comics after one of their publications, Detective Comics. As the first publisher to print full-length comic magazines, Wheeler Nicholson is commonly considered the pioneer of the American comic book. Siegel and Shuster took many freelance jobs for him, writing and inking a number of relatively popular strips for his various magazines. In 1937, they were given the task of writing Slam Bradley, a 13-page recurring series for Detective Comics, which they later referred to as the forerunner of Superman, using it as a dry run, using some of the slam bam stuff they knew would be in Superman if they got it launched, despite its more obvious comparisons to their The Superman book. With National preparing to launch a 4th book, Action Comics, in 1938, they finally showed interest in Superman. Siegel and Shuster prepared a 13-page rush job on a tight deadline, cutting and pasting their original strips into the new format. Superman's origin story was approved for Action Comics #1, which flew onto newsstands that June, 5 years after they first used the name Superman in print. For the magazine's cover, National used a promotional artwork Shuster drew years earlier to help sell the strips, an image which has become one of the most iconic and recognisable in all pop culture. Now considered the first ever superhero comic, the super in superhero literally stemming from the super in Superman, Action Comics #1 was an instant hit, with a first-run issue selling for over $3.2 million in 2014. It's now the single most valuable comic of all time. Despite being reprinted dozens of times since, Siegel and Shuster received only $3 each for their work, equivalent to $45 in 2021. Superman continued to headline every issue of Action Comics, and after only 5 months, the McClure Syndicate acquired rights to publish a Superman comic strip, which began running in daily newspapers in January 1939, with a colour Sunday strip added that November. At its height, the strip was printed in close to 400 newspapers and had a readership of over 20 million. After only 1 year of Action Comics, National gave Superman his own series, and alongside Action Comics #13, Superman #1 hit newsstands in June 1939 as the first ever comic book focused on a solo character. It quickly sold more than 1 million copies. Superman was now a phenomenon, spawning a lucrative franchise with merchandise and appearances in promotional marketing. A Superman balloon floated at the 1939 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and the 1939-1940 New York City World's Fair held a Superman Day, where actor Ray Middleton appeared in person as the character in full costume, making him the first actor to ever portray the character officially. A strange addition to the costume in this iteration saw Superman's name emblazoned across the top of his chest emblem in order to further familiarise him by name with the public. Legendary Marvel Comics writer Stan Lee later said, "Superman established the idea of somebody who seems to be a meek, ordinary, average person and is really a superhero. It was a formula that virtually every superhero owes a debt to. And in no time, Superman's popularity made way for more superpowered beings over the next couple of years, including National's very own Batman and Wonder Woman, Fawcett's Captain Marvel, and Marvel's Human Torch and Captain America. The golden age of comic books kicked off, and throughout the period, Superman remained the best-selling character. Superman soon made his first major leap into extended media when DC adapted the comic into a radio serial. After only 23 comics, The Adventures of Superman debuted in February 1940, with actor Bud Collyer taking on the dual role of Clark Kent and Superman. Collyer was chosen for his unique ability to instantaneously shift between tenor and bass vocal tones.
This is a job for Superman.
Which also eliminated the need to pay for 2 actors. Collier's casting was actually kept a secret for 6 years to hide the secret identity of Superman from the public. The radio show was a hit, reaching more than 20 million listeners by the end of its first year. Running for 11 years until March 1951 and close to 2,100 episodes, the series contributed quite a bit to the Superman mythos, spawning the catchphrase,
"Up in the sky, look, it's a bird,
It's a plane!
it's Superman!"
introducing the characters of Perry White and Jimmy Olsen, and also debuting kryptonite as Superman's only weakness. This was a simple plot device used to occasionally incapacitate Superman for entire episodes, allowing Collyer to take breaks. More recently, kryptonite has been linked to Superman's mythological roots, drawing parallels with Greek warrior Achilles and his one vulnerability. While Superman debuted in essentially his most recognisable form, early years saw small modifications to character design as comic artists continued to refine him visually. Most notably, Superman's emblem went through various iterations, beginning as a badge-like shield before transforming into a straight-edged triangle. The S in the middle soon gained serifs and continually morphed with the ever-changing shape of the shield. By 1940, the emblem had stretched across Superman's entire chest and taken a pentagon shape. Colours also altered until 1944, when the logo more so resembled its most common design, though would of course continue to vary slightly over the decades. Superman's rogues gallery expanded too, introducing recurring villains such as Lex Luthor and Mr. Mxyzptlk. His powers also modified, with his only major abilities in 1938's Action Comics #1 being super strength, super speed, bulletproof skin, and the ability to leap large heights and distances. By 1939, he'd inherited his heat vision, X-ray vision, and super hearing, and by 1940, he had his super breath. However, one of Superman's most iconic abilities didn't spawn until 1941, outside of the comics. In mid-1941, Max and Dave Fleischer of the Fleischer Studios, behind the Popeye cartoons, were swimming in a debt equivalent to $11 million in 2021. Popeye, now over a decade in production with almost 100 shorts, was their only profitable series. Having just completed their first feature, Gulliver's Travels, which went wildly over budget, Paramount Studios, their distributor, tried to find a lucrative property to boost the popularity of the Fleischer's output and help their monetary problems. Because Popeye's strip-to-screen translation worked so well, Paramount naturally looked to the world's latest and hottest comic sensation for a potential series. Quickly acquiring the rights to Superman, Paramount took the project to the Fleischers. Completely disinterested in producing more cartoons, particularly ones so challenging, they asked for a ludicrously high $100,000 per film budget, about $1.8 million in 2021, hoping that Paramount would drop the project. Paramount, however, engaged in negotiations and managed to haggle the Fleischers down to $50,000 an installment, 4 times the cost of a Popeye. The animators begrudgingly agreed and began work. The first cartoon, aptly titled Superman, released in September 1941. For the series, the Fleischers hired Bud Collyer, who at this point had surely played the character in close to 400 episodes of the radio serial. From the serial, the cartoons also lifted the catchphrase,
"Up in the sky, look, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman!"
and even added to it,
faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings at a single bound.
This extended intro became so well known itself that it eventually crossed over to the radio serial in later years. The series also gave Superman the ability of flight, introduced with permission from DC, simply because animators found it to be more exciting and dynamic than Superman just leaping everywhere. Owing to their exorbitant budgets, the Supermans were some of the most technologically advanced, highest quality cartoons produced during the golden age of animation. Making use of incredible special effects, cinematic shot framing and editing, and a pulp-inspired visual design while staying true to the comic style, the first cartoon was nominated for the Best Short Subject Cartoons Academy Award, though lost to Disney's Lend a Paw. Regardless, the series was so insanely influential that Dan Ribber, director of 1996's Superman the Animated Series, has credited it with establishing Superman as the icon he is today. Unfortunately, this was not enough to save the animators from their debt, and after only 9 cartoons, Paramount liquidated the Fleischer Studios, reforming it anew as Famous Studios in 1942. With an entire series order on Superman, Paramount continued production, releasing a further 8 cartoons until 1943. While the Fleischer cartoons had taken on a more sci-fi adventure feel, the Famous cartoons were rooted in World War II propaganda, with the USA recently joining the war effort. Despite this odd shift, the cartoons helped solidify Superman as a national hero, a symbol of hope in oppressive times. By now, Superman had penetrated the same pop culture zeitgeist he'd emerged from, so much so that he'd began to inform it. Warner Brothers parodied him in multiple Looney Tunes, including 1943's Bugs Bunny, Super Rabbit, and a decade later in 1956's Daffy Duck, Stupid Duck. Perhaps the parody that Siegel and Shuster were most delighted with, however, was 1944's Popeye, She-Six Sailors. One of the major inspirations for Superman was now inspired by him. Throughout the 1940s, Superman's mythos and iconography continually expanded. In 1942, his phone booth costume change was first depicted in the strips, and that year, Random House published the novel The Adventures of Superman by George Lowther. The book featured illustrations by Shuster and once again told Superman's origin. It was the first novelization of a comic character. His backstory was further expanded with the appearance of Superboy in 1944's More Fun Comics number 101. This juvenile version of the character was moved in 1946 to Adventure Comics, where he headlined for a further 200 issues. The character became so popular in his own right that DC launched a Superboy solo comic series in 1949, marking the debut of Kal-El's hometown, Smallville, and his teen love interest, Lana Lang. In 1948, Superman landed on the big screen in Columbia Pictures' 15-part live-action Superman film serial, a series of 16-minute episodes screened in cinemas as part of a matinee bill aimed at children. Like all serials, most episodes ended with a cliffhanger, enticing audiences to return again for the next part. The serial, which told of Superman's origin and saw him going up against the Spider Lady, was unsurprisingly popular, and at a time when the format was dying out, became the most profitable film serial in history. Due to this, in 1950, it spawned a 15-part sequel serial, Atom Man vs. Superman, which saw Superman battling Luthor. Both serials were produced on small budgets, leading to a lot of cut corners. Footage was repurposed constantly, as were old sets, props, and musical scores from the 1943 Batman serials. Most glaringly, however, all takeoff and flight scenes were cel animated, disappointing audiences of the time who wanted to see Superman fly in live action. Kirk Alyn was the actor chosen to portray the character for the first time in live action, and much like Collyer, went uncredited on screen. While Alyn did get credit in posters and marketing, it was only for the character of Clark, with Columbia also believing Superman's identity should remain secret, even touting they had secured Superman himself for the films. 1 year after the serial's conclusion, Superman appeared in his very first feature-length film, Superman and the Mole Men, which was produced independently on a shoestring budget equal to $300,000 in 2021. The film starred the charismatic George Reeves, and bypassed the usual origin story to instead focus on an already developed Superman. The film was made not only as a B-movie, but as a pilot for television series The Adventures of Superman, which began filming immediately after. The series finally depicted Superman flying in live action for the first time. Debuting in September 1952, the series, to the surprise of its cast, was a huge success, and more episodes were ordered. The series ran until 1958 for 6 seasons, switching from black and white to colour for its last 3, a rare move when colour TV was still a decade from being widespread. While the black and white episodes were serious, gritty, and film noir-esque with grounded storylines about local gangsters and crime syndicates, the colour seasons shifted towards a whimsical and comedic tone, making way for over-the-top sci-fi adventures. Now, Superman was everywhere. Merchandise poured out, comic sales soared, Reeves appeared in character on a 1957 episode of I Love Lucy and in a series of TV commercials for sponsor Kellogg's. Film historian Leonard Moulton said, "Everybody watched that show. It was part of the fabric of American youthful life." Due to the immensity of its popularity, Reeves was soon typecast, and became frustrated with the role when he couldn't find other work. On June 16, 1959, Reeves was found dead in his home from a gunshot wound to the head. With no fingerprints on the gun, not even his own, rumours began swirling. Had Reeves committed suicide? Was he murdered? Did he accidentally kill himself believing to actually be Superman? His death remains one of Hollywood's most infamous unsolved mysteries, even inspiring the film Hollywoodland, starring Ben Affleck in the role of Reeves. Despite plans for 2 more seasons, the death of Reeves brought The Adventures of Superman to a grinding halt. Initially, producers planned to shift the show's focus to Jimmy Olsen and retitle it Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen, utilising stock footage of Reeves and new footage of a stunt double to keep Superman around, though Olsen actor Jack Larson refused to take part. A pilot for a spin-off series, The Adventures of Superpup, was filmed on the series sets, featuring small actors in dog suits portraying canine versions of the characters. Later, an Adventures of Superboy spin-off was also attempted, focusing on the adventures of young Clark Kent in Smallville, with the character portrayed by Johnny Rockwell. Neither pilot managed to pick up a sponsor and thus never aired or went to series. By the late 1950s, Superman was appearing in 7 comic series, which were together selling more than 4 million copies a month. With Mort Weisinger, the lead editor of the Superman comics throughout the mid-1950s to early 1960s, the mythos of the character was again expanded, as he aimed for a more logical and coherent comic universe, essentially introducing the idea of expanded universes into comic media. He brought more logic to the character's powers and introduced new world-building concepts such as the Fortress of Solitude, the Phantom Zone, the Bottled City of Kandor, Bizarro World, and various varieties of kryptonite. He was behind the first meeting of Superman and Batman in 1952's Superman number 76, introduced the Legion of Superheroes and the Legion of Super Pets, as well as villains like General Zod, Bizarro, and Brainiac. Most notably, however, the character of Kara Zor-El, aka Supergirl, debuted in 1959's Action Comics number 252. Supergirl, the teenage cousin of Superman, was so popular in her own right that by 1969 she was headlining Adventure Comics, and by 1972 was starring in her own solo series. Under the watch of editor Julius Schwartz, who took over from Weisinger on Superman in 1971, the Justice League of America was formed in writer Gardner Fox's March 1960 issue of The Brave and the Bold. Here, Superman fought alongside other DC mainstays: Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and Martian Manhunter. The popularity of the Super Team naturally spawned a Justice League comic series only 8 months later. This period also saw prolific comic writer Jack Kirby establishing his fourth world epic, through which the character of Darkseid was introduced, later becoming one of Superman's biggest enemies. Thanks to these expansions, Superman remained the best-selling comic book character through the 1970s. In 1966, Superman flew onto the stage in a Broadway musical It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman, which starred Bob Holliday. Despite a decent opening and 3 Tony Award nominations, the production failed to keep an audience and closed after only 3.5 months and 128 performances. With a $600,000 budget, a gigantic cost for the time, it's been described as one of the most expensive flops in Broadway history. In effort to make back some of its money, the production was filmed as a television special in 1975, starring David Wilson. Airing in a late-night time slot on ABC, it wasn't well received by the few who actually saw it. Also in 1966, Superman returned to animation in Filmation's The New Adventures of Superman. Airing on Saturday mornings and produced in the economic limited animation style, the series featured a mix of 6-minute Superman and Superboy cartoons, with Bud Collyer once again returning as Superman and Bob Hastings as Superboy. A rating smash, these cartoons ran for 4 years. In the 1967 season, they were played alongside cartoons featuring the Justice League, and in the 1968 season, alongside Batman cartoons. The 1969 season was made up entirely of reruns of the 68 and 34 episodes of Superman and Superboy, respectively. Unfortunately, the series found itself a victim of Action for Children's Television, an organisation who, in the late 1960s, successfully rallied against poorly regulated children's TV. Buckling under pressure, the network cancelled the hyper-violent series in 1970. In 1972, Filmation guest-starred Superman in The Brady Kids, an animated version of the popular Brady Bunch series, which was a result of now toned-down kids' TV. In 1973, Hanna-Barbera gained the rights to DC characters and launched the Super Friends series, based on the Justice League comics. Again produced in limited animation with designs respectful to the comics, the series lasted 1 season before being cancelled, likely due to its watered-down violence. However, renewed interest in superhero television with success of the live-action Wonder Woman series spawned a revival in 1977 as the all-new Super Friends Hour, which debuted to even higher ratings. Various iterations of Super Friends aired until 1986, with the roster and series title altering regularly. Fresh off their impressive 2-film production of Alexandre Dumas' The Three Musketeers, producers Ilya and Alexander Salkind purchased the Superman film rights from DC in 1974, intent on creating a grand 2-part epic for Warner Brothers. Spawning at the dawn of the Hollywood blockbuster, the Salkinds wanted it to be big, ambitious, and groundbreaking, envisioning a superhero motion picture unlike any before. In order to break free from the comic-y tone of previous incarnations and strip the character back to more serious roots, they hired Mario Puzo, author and screenwriter of The Godfather. Puzo was instantly sold on the idea of Superman as a Greek tragedy, and infused the story with religious themes and ideologies, informing the modern representation of Superman as a Christ-like figure. Hired to direct the film was The Omen's Richard Donner, who, unimpressed with the screenplay's darkness and cynicism, pulled in screenwriter Tom Mankiewicz, whose experience on 3 James Bond films made him the perfect candidate to put a more light-hearted, hopeful, fantastical, and nostalgic spin on Puzo's story. After an exhausting casting process, unknown actor Christopher Reeve was hired for the dual role, thanks to his on-screen confidence and charm. Notably, the film also managed to cast legendary Marlon Brando as Superman's father, Jor-El, adding an unheard-of prestige to the superhero genre and solidifying the movie as something to take seriously. Superman the movie and Superman 2 went into production, not back-to-back, but concurrently, with both films telling a grand epic that spanned Kal-El's journey to Earth, the origins of Superman, and his first encounters with Lex Luthor, General Zod, and the Phantom Zone criminals. With a $55 million budget each, close to $300 million in 2021, the movies were the most expensive in history. As a result, the legendary story was brought to life grander than ever. Enormous sets were built, bringing Krypton and Metropolis to life like never before, and new technologies were created to realistically display Superman's lexicon of abilities and, as the film's posters would declare, make audiences believe a man can fly. Superman the movie opened in cinemas in December 1978 and immediately began shattering box office records, taking $300 million worldwide, the equivalent of $1.2 billion in 2021. It became the highest grossing movie of the year and the 6th highest of all time. Despite having shot 70% of the sequel, Donner had been pulled away from it to finish the first when production went over schedule. When it came time to resume production, he was removed from it completely, as his relationship with the Salkinds had deteriorated. Richard Lester, who directed the Salkinds' Musketeer films, came in to not only finish the film, but reshape and reshoot much of Donner's footage. Superman 2 opened between 1980 and 1981, though while the film likewise broke numerous box office records, it failed to earn as much as the first, with $180 million worldwide. The success of both films, however, spawned a lucrative franchise. 1983's Superman 3 co-starred Richard Pryor as computer hacker Gus Gorman, saw Superman split into good and evil personas, and was much more madcap in tone, working as more of a comedic vehicle for the popular Pryor than a traditional Superman sequel. 1987's Superman 4: The Quest for Peace aimed to take the series back to its serious roots, with Superman fighting nuclear disarmament and Lex Luthor's villainous creation, Nuclear Man. With declining budgets, the movies grew less impressive, and despite how serious the latter tried to be, simply came off cheap and corny. They were met with declining critical and commercial success. Additionally, the franchise spawned a Supergirl spin-off movie in 1984 starring Helen Slater, which saw Kara visiting Earth to fight a wicked witch, and a Superboy spin-off TV series, which ran for 4 seasons between 1988 and 1992, focusing on the early adventures of a young Clark Kent taking on his first missions as the Man of Steel. He was portrayed by John Newton in Season 1 and Gerard Christopher for the remainder of the series. In 2006, an internet fan movement successfully championed Warner's into allowing Richard Donner to finally complete his vision for Superman 2. Released as Superman 2: The Richard Donner Cut, the film is highly regarded by fans as the better version of the film, offering a more consistent and authentic follow-up to the first. In the comics, Superman's popularity had diminished over time. By the 70s, he'd become so overpowered that writers struggled to find exciting stories for him with real stakes. More existential, character-driven stories were introduced, and religious symbology became more heavy-handed. Superman's popularity was soon overshadowed by that of Batman, who in large part, due to Tim Burton's 1989 Batman film and its 1992 sequel Batman Returns, soon became DC's coolest and most popular character. In order to combat Superman's decline, writer John Byrne was tasked with reinvigorating him in 1986's 6-part limited series Man of Steel, a contemporary retelling. Byrne gave Superman a fresh look, reined in his powers, and gave Clark a newfound confidence. For a brief moment, audience interest was reignited. In 1988, Superman returned to TV animation in Ruby Spears' Superman, which retold his origins to align with the new mythos. Here, Superman appeared in a modern, vibrant design, similar to the Byrne depiction. It lasted 13 episodes through which Bo Weaver voiced the character. When Byrne left DC, comic sales fell again, and more major story arcs were introduced to reinvigorate interest again. First, there was the engagement of Clark and Lois, which saw Clark revealing his true identity. The arc ran between 1990 and 1996, culminating with their wedding. Then was The Death of Superman, an arc which ran between 1992 and 1993, and saw Superman killed at the hands of Krypton-born demon monster Doomsday. The brutal murder of Superman was a touchstone moment in American culture, with the issue selling 3 million copies in only 3 weeks. In one of comic history's darkest stories, Superman disappeared from his own pages for 9 whole issues. He was, of course, eventually resurrected, again drawing Christ-like parallels, and returned to comics having regained some popularity. As part of the Superman renaissance, a new live-action series hit the airwaves in 1993. Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman focused predominantly on the relationship and eventual romance of the title characters, but also presented traditional Superman stories, bringing in classic foes such as Lex Luthor and introducing new ones such as the Diabolical Tempest. Here, Superman and Clark were portrayed by Dean Cain. Using the new Byrne mythology as its backbone, Lois and Clark was a Superman series for the modern age, and unlike unlike previous TV iterations, was aimed at older audiences, unafraid of steamy, sexually charged storylines, which were a large audience draw and a major factor in the series' initial popularity. Over time, however, Lois and Clark grew more fantastical, madcap, and kid-friendly, resulting in dropping ratings. In the 4th season, following the then concurrent comic arc, Lois and Clark tied the knot. However, while this arc helped spike comic sales, it simply resulted in further loss of viewers for the series, losing much of its tension-fueled audience draw. Despite being announced for a 5th season, Lois and Clark was cancelled in 1997. As they were given little warning, showrunners ended season 4 on a now infamously unresolved cliffhanger. In 1992, Warner Bros. Launched Batman the Animated Series, a dark, gritty, noir-drenched, adult-oriented show which drew heavy inspiration from the classic Fleischer cartoons. Running until 1995 with a follow-up series in 1997, it's one of the most critically lauded animated series in history, spawning a successful TV franchise known as the DC Animated Universe. The second series to launch in this universe was Superman the Animated Series in 1996, which featured the voice of Tim Daly. For this iteration, producer Bruce Timm and his animators continued to draw from the Fleischer shorts for their visual and narrative style, presenting a classical, more idealized version of the Superman mythos, while borrowing character traits developed by Byrne. The series saw Superman up against many villains, though primarily Luthor, Brainiac, and Darkseid. In a number of episodes, Supergirl even appeared. In its entirety, it ran for 54 episodes over 3 seasons until 2000. In that same year, a futuristic version of Superman appeared in a 2-part episode of Batman Beyond, voiced by Christopher McDonald. In 2001, the DC Animated Universe launched Justice League, which crossed over the Batman and Superman series and teamed the characters up with other members of the Super Team. With the character now voiced by George Newbern, the series ran for 52 episodes across 2 seasons, then spawned follow-up series Justice League Unlimited in 2004, which saw the League's roster of heroes expanded. Unlimited ran for a further 39 episodes across 3 seasons until 2006. While a Superman-Batman series was considered, Unlimited ultimately marked the final series in the animated universe. In 2004, an animated Superman, inspired by early designs, appeared in 2 comedic TV commercials for American Express, alongside comedian Jerry Seinfeld. Collectively known as The Adventures of Seinfeld and Superman, these now iconic ads starred Patrick Warburton in the role of Superman. In 2006, after no live-action TV Superman for almost a decade, Warner Bros. Premiered Smallville, a series based on the Superboy comics, featuring a young Clark Kent, portrayed by Tom Welling, growing up in the eponymous small town. In what Warner's referred to as a from the roots reinterpretation of the Superman mythology, showrunners Alfred Goff and Miles Miller wanted to strip Superman to his bare essence, and developed a no tights, no flights rule, in which Clark would never learn to fly or put on the iconic suit, thus never actually becoming Superman or Superboy. Instead, early seasons focused on Clark's travails learning how to fit in at school and adjust to his ever-flourishing abilities, while confronting a roster of surface-level monster of the week antagonists. Along for the ride were characters like Lana Lang and Lex Luthor, whose descent into madness was also charted. In later episodes, Clark moved to Metropolis and joined the Daily Planet as a reporter, and Lois Lane was introduced as a leading character. As the episodes switched to more fantastical, comic book style overarching epics, the Fortress of Solitude became a recurring backdrop. Kara El, aka Supergirl, made numerous appearances, portrayed by Laura Vandervoort, and numerous members of the Justice League were introduced, culminating in a team-up event. The final seasons of the show saw Clark embracing a superhero identity, and only in the final episode donning the suit and learning to fly. Smallville was a staple of young adult television for a decade, lasting 10 seasons, and its popularity led to the inception of Arrow and the eventual Arrowverse of connected TV series, including 2015's Supergirl, starring Melissa Benoist, currently in its 6th season. In the 2019 Arrowverse crossover event, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Smallville characters made a brief appearance in a universe-hopping sequence, providing a small epilogue to the original series. Missing from cinema screens for almost 20 years, various Superman projects were attempted but ultimately failed to take flight. Most notably, a 90s project called Superman Lives would have seen a live-action adaptation of The Death of Superman. With a script by Kevin Smith and direction by Tim Burton, the film would have starred Nicolas Cage as Superman. Deep into production, the film was ultimately cancelled only 3 weeks before filming was set to begin. Additionally, a Batman vs Superman film was planned as early as 2002, as was an attempted franchise revival called Superman Flyby, written by J.J. Abrams, for which future Superman Henry Cavill screen-tested. George Miller's Justice League Mortal, set to star DJ Catrona as Superman, was also set to film in 2008 before being pulled at the final hour. An idea that did gain traction, however, was one devised by Bryan Singer as an extension of the Christopher Reeve films. In Superman Returns, which opened in June 2006, Superman has been off-world for 5 years and returns to a changed Earth where he has to rebuild his personal life and public reputation. Much like the Reeves films, Returns, which starred Brandon Routh, was an incredibly bright, vibrant, and hopeful comic book flick, with Routh literally playing the Reeves version of the character. Despite critic praise, audiences were less receptive, and the film majorly underperformed at the box office, forcing Warner's to abort sequel plans for what was a hopeful franchise reboot. With Supermania at an all-time high in 2006, Warner's developed the Legion of Superheroes, a child-aimed series centering on a young Superman fighting alongside the Legion. Set in the future, the series didn't share continuity with anything else, standing alone. The series also introduced Superman X, a clone of the original Superman. Each version was voiced by Yuri Lowenthal. A year earlier, Krypto the Superdog, a short-lived series focused on the super-powered pup, debuted. Superman appeared in one episode, voiced by Michael Dangerfield. Krypto later appeared in the 2013 DC Super Pets shorts, in which Superman appeared voiced by Armin Shimmerman. Debuting in 2007, however, was a new DC animated universe, in the form of feature-length, straight-to-home media movies, mostly produced in limited digital animation. Kicking off the series was Superman Doomsday, based on the Death of Superman arc, immediately setting the tone for a darker, adult-oriented series of cartoons. The series currently encompasses over 40 features and more than 10 shorts, most of which are standalone adventures based on famous comic arcs. Currently, Superman has appeared in 23 films. Notable entries include 2008's Justice League New Frontier, a 1950s set Justice League origin story, the two Superman-Batman adventures, 2009's Public Enemies and 2010's Apocalypse, 2013's Superman Unbound, co-starring Supergirl, 2017's Justice League Dark, and its follow-up Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, which retold Jack Kirby's New Gods arc. 2018 and 2019's second Death of Superman adaptation, including Death of Superman and Reign of the Supermen, 2020's Superman Red Sun, set in an Elseworld where Kal-El lands in Soviet Russia and becomes a communist dictator, and 2020's Superman Man of Tomorrow, a retelling of a young Superman's early adventures. He additionally appeared in the 2010 short film Superman Shazam! The Return of Black Adam. Across these, he is seen in different variations of style, design, and personality, with numerous voice actors taking over the role, including Tim Daly, George Newbern, Jerry O'Connell, Alan Tudyk, Adam Baldwin, Kyle MacLachlan, Matt Bomer, Jason Isaacs, Mark Harmon, James Denton, Mark Valley, Sam Daly, Benjamin Bratt, and Darren Criss. Other recent TV series to feature Superman include 2004's The Batman, in 2 team-up episodes voiced by George Newbern. Young Justice, originally running from 2010 to 2013 and revived in 2019, which saw an adult Superman supporting a teenage Justice League, including his young clone Connor Kent, aka Superboy, both voiced by Nolan North. Arrowverse's 2018 Titans saw a version of this character portrayed by Joshua Orphan, alongside Krypto. 2016's Justice League Action, a modern Justice League revival featuring stylized animation, starred Jason J. Lewis in the role. He's also had recurring appearances voiced by Max Mittelman in 2019's ongoing DC Superhero Girls, featuring a female-led teenage super team including Supergirl, and sporadic appearances voiced by James Wolk in 2019's ongoing animated series Harley Quinn. He additionally appeared, voiced by Channing Tatum, in Lego Style in the Lego Movie 1 and 2 and the Lego Batman movie spin-off. Following the incredible success of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight films, Warner Brothers wanted to revamp Superman, and Nolan and screenwriter David S. Goyer successfully pitched a similar take that positioned Superman as the sole hero in his universe. Warner's hired Nolan as producer, Goyer as screenwriter, Zack Snyder as director, and Henry Cavill as Superman. Man of Steel hit cinemas in June 2013 and presented a Superman origin much darker in tone and more grounded in reality than anything before. While the film was disconnected from the previous Superman movies, Warner's initially hoped to link it to Nolan's Dark Knight saga, before Nolan vetoed the idea. Despite opening to mixed critical reception, it was a box office hit, and sequel plans got rolling right away. But instead of a traditional sequel, Warner's and Snyder instead used the film as a launchpad for a new cinematic universe of grand, epic proportions. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice followed, taking cues from both The Death of Superman and The Dark Knight Returns graphic novel by Frank Miller. The film teamed Superman up with Batman and Wonder Woman, portrayed by Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot respectively, marking the first time the DC Trinity appeared together in live action. Despite an even more controversial, divided response from audience and critics, BVS took in close to $900 million at the box office and solidified the DC Extended Universe, finally making a true Justice League film possible in 2017. Teaming the Trinity with The Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg. Despite Snyder's grand plan for a Justice League trilogy, during pre-production he left the project following a family tragedy, and Warner's brought in Joss Whedon, who'd successfully led Marvel's The Avengers to $1.5 billion at the box office. Now with cold feet following BVS's largely negative reception, Warner's gave Whedon $25 million and 3 months to extensively reshoot and drastically reshape the film, throwing out an estimated 90% of the footage and giving it a lighter, brighter tone. Through reshoots, Cavill sported a thick moustache as he was filming Mission Impossible Fallout at the same time, leading to some wonky, last-minute CGI work and the weirdest on-screen Superman to date. The movie landed with a gigantic thud, both critically and commercially, losing the studio $60 million. Sequel plans were cancelled and the future of the DCEU thrown in jeopardy. Thanks, however, to another large internet fan campaign, Warner's agreed to fund Snyder $70 million to complete his vision of the film, with the 4-hour epic Zack Snyder's Justice League landing on HBO Max in March 2021. The most recent incarnation of Superman on our screens hails from the Arrowverse, in which the character is portrayed by Tyler Hoechlin. This interpretation first appeared in Supergirl during its second season, before making sporadic appearances throughout the series and crossing into other Arrowverse shows during crossover events. In the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, he was pitted against a reimagined version of the character as portrayed by Brandon Routh. The Hoechlin version of the character is now the star of his very own series, Superman and Lois, which debuted in early 2021. This series takes a grittier, more grounded approach to the Lois and Clark concept, with the characters, now middle-aged parents, focused on not only saving the world, but raising a family. While Superman is depicted throughout the series in a modern-style outfit, the premiere episode featured a flashback seeing him in a Fleischer-style suit, even paying homage to the classic Action Comics #1 cover, bringing the character full circle in his 8th decade. First volume runs on Action Comics and Superman ran until October 2011 for 904 and 714 issues respectively, before immediately kicking off their Volume 2 runs as part of the New 52 revamp and relaunch of every DC comic title. Here, Superman saw yet another overhaul as a more modern and accessible New Earth Superman. In 2016, the New 52 line came to an end with DC restoring their universe to its previous state and doubling back the comic series to their original numbering, where they continue in production today. Where Superman's on-screen life will go from here is uncertain. With reports that Henry Cavill has hung up the suit, new rumours have surfaced that Warners are eyeing off yet another reboot of the character, perhaps outside of the DCEU. Alleged to star a black Superman, it'll likely be based on the New 52 multiverse version Calvin Alice, or the more recent multiverse iteration Val Zod. Meanwhile, actress Sasha Calle has been cast to portray Supergirl in the upcoming DCEU movie The Flash. Over the years, Superman has appeared in thousands of comics, selling more issues than any other superhero in history. He also remains the single most portrayed superhero on screen and in extended media. With his 85th anniversary fast approaching and the character showing no signs of slowing down, it's clear that the Man of Steel is truly immortal. Hey everyone, if you haven't yet, smash that big old subscribe button up on your screen to keep up to date with all my content and hit that like button down below. Also, don't forget to check me out on social media and please consider supporting me over on Patreon for as little as $1 a month for exclusive videos, early access content, and to get your name up on the screen. Thanks again for watching.